Number 12. Mughal, the undefeated viceroy. At number 12, we've got Mughal, the war chief who never lost a battle and ruled North China like his own personal chessboard. Born into the steppe tradition in the late 12th century, Mughal rose from tribal warrior to become Genghis Khan's most trusted commander in the Jin dynasty campaigns. When Genghis Khan turned his attention west toward the Khwarezmian Empire, he didn't worry about his rear because Mughal was there, grinding down the Jin fortress by fortress. He was appointed as viceroy, effectively acting as Genghis's proxy ruler over all Mongol operations in North China. But here's where it gets deadly. While the Great Khan was obliterating Central Asia, Mughal kept up relentless pressure on one of the most fortified civilizations on Earth. The Jin had walls, siege defenses, and millions of soldiers. Mughal didn't care. He adapted. He co-opted enemy generals, converted resistance into collaboration, and when cities refused, he unleashed terror so calculated that nearby cities would surrender at the mere sight of his banners on the horizon. He understood something most conquerors didn't. Conquest isn't just about destruction, it's about conversion. His campaigns were surgical. He would isolate cities, starve them, offer mercy to those who bent the knee, and annihilate those who didn't. One fortress after another crumbled. He never lost, not once. His forces became a machine, relentless, adaptive, unstoppable. By the time of his death in the early 13th century, he had set the conditions for the eventual Yuan dynasty unification of all China. He didn't just win battles, he laid the foundation for empire. He lands in Tier 3 because while his battlefield record was flawless, his legacy was as an enforcer, not an architect. He executed Genghis Khan's vision with ruthless precision, but the vision wasn't his. Still, undefeated is undefeated and that earns respect. But undefeated records are just the beginning. Number 11. Tolui Khan, the Silent Storm. At number 11, we have Tolui Khan, Genghis Khan's youngest son, the warrior prince who became the deadliest field general of his generation, and the father of 3 Khans who would reshape the world. Born in the late 12th century, Tolui inherited the Mongol heartland, the source of the empire's manpower and horses. But his true inheritance was his father's trust. Tolui commanded the main Mongol field army during the final campaigns against the Jin dynasty and was the operational genius behind some of the most brutal sieges in history. When Genghis Khan needed a city taken, a pass forced, or an army destroyed, he sent Tolui. In the early 13th century, Tolui led a massive army into a campaign that showcased Mongol combined arms warfare at its peak. He faced fortified mountain passes, walled cities with Chinese siege defenses, and armies that outnumbered him. His solution? Operational maneuver. He didn't bash his head against walls. He flanked entire defensive lines, coordinated multi-column advances, and used terrain like a weapon. At the Battle of Sanfeng Mountain, his forces annihilated a Jin army in the snow, using weather, terrain, and tactical patience to trap and destroy tens of thousands. The Jin thought the mountains would protect them. Tolui proved that geography meant nothing when you understood it better than your enemy. He turned their defensive advantage into a tomb. But Tolui's legacy isn't just his own campaigns. His bloodline became the empire's future. His sons, Mongke, Kublai, and Hulagu, would become great Khans and conquerors of China, Persia, and the Islamic heartland. Through his veins flowed the strategic genius that would dominate Eurasia for a century. He served as regent after his father's death, holding the empire together until the next Khan could be chosen. Some legends say he died by drinking poisoned wine meant for his brother Ogode, sacrificing himself to preserve the succession. Whether true or not, the story tells you everything. Tolui was the empire's shield, its sword, and its foundation. If you are still watching, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. He lands in Tier 3 because he was the ultimate supporting player, devastatingly effective, but always in service of another's reign. His sons would surpass him in fame, but none would match his raw battlefield lethality. And speaking of sons, number 10. Mongke Khan, the reformer conqueror. At number 10, we've got Mongke Khan, the great Khan who reformed the empire, launched simultaneous mega-campaigns, and died trying to finish what his grandfather started. Mongke was Tolui's eldest son, born in the early 13th century and raised in the crucible of conquest. He fought alongside his father and uncles, learning the art of war from the generation that had shattered the world. When he became great Khan in the mid-13th century, he inherited an empire drowning in corruption, tribal politics, and administrative chaos. His first act? A brutal purge. He executed corrupt officials, reformed the tax system, and reorganized the military. But Mongke wasn't just an administrator, he was a conqueror. He launched 2 of the most ambitious campaigns in military history simultaneously. He sent his brother Hulagu west to destroy the Islamic world, and his brother Kublai south to conquer the Song dynasty in China. 2 massive armies, thousands of miles apart, both operating under his strategic vision. This wasn't just warfare, it was operational art on a continental scale. While Hulagu was sacking Baghdad and ending the Abbasid Caliphate, Mongke himself led armies into southern China, fighting in the brutal terrain of Sichuan. The Song were masters of river warfare, fortified cities, and guerrilla tactics in mountainous jungles. Mongke adapted. He built fleets, coordinated siege operations, and pushed deeper into territory that had resisted conquest for centuries. Then, in the summer of 1259, Mongke died during the campaign. The exact cause remains debated. Some say dysentery, others say an arrow wound, some whisper poison, but his death changed everything. The Mongol advance into Europe had stopped when Ogedei died. Now, the conquest of the Song stalled. Hulagu withdrew from the Levant. The empire fractured as his brothers fought over succession. Mongke's tragedy was that he was too effective. His reforms worked, his campaigns succeeded, but he pushed too hard, too fast, and his death created a civil war that would split the empire forever. He lands in Tier 3 because his reign was transformative but incomplete. He set the pieces in motion for his brothers to conquer China and Persia, but he didn't live to see it. Yet his vision lived on in those who came after. Number 9. Chagatai Khan, the Law's Iron Fist. At number 9, we have Chagatai Khan, Genghis Khan's second son, the enforcer of the Yasa, and the founder of the Central Asian Khanate that would last for centuries. Born around the late 12th century, Chagatai was raised to embody Mongol law and tradition. His father trusted him to uphold the Yasa, the sacred legal code that governed everything from military discipline to social conduct. While his brothers, Jochi and Tolui, commanded armies, and Ogedei administered the empire, Chagatai was the empire's conscience, its judge, and its executioner. He ruled Transoxiana and Kashgaria, the heartland of the old Silk Road, the crossroads between east and west. His domain included the ancient cities of Samarkand, Bukhara, and Kashgar. These weren't just cities, they were symbols of civilization, culture, and wealth, and Chagatai ruled them with an iron fist wrapped in the Yasa. His military campaigns were fewer than his brothers, but no less brutal. He participated in the conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire, where cities that resisted were erased so completely that their names faded from maps. He enforced Mongol dominance over sedentary populations who thought walls and culture would protect them. They learned otherwise. But Chagatai's true legacy was his lineage. The Chagatai Khanate became one of the 4 successor states of the Mongol Empire, controlling Central Asia for over a century. His descendants included Timur Tamerlane, who would create his own blood-soaked empire in the 14th century, claiming descent from Chagatai to legitimize his conquests. Chagatai was the keeper of tradition in an empire that was rapidly changing. He resisted his brother Ogedei's more cosmopolitan reforms, believing that the Mongols should remain true to their steppe origins. This made him conservative, rigid, but utterly reliable. When the empire needed someone to enforce discipline, they called Chagatai. He lands in Tier 3 because his impact was institutional rather than purely military. He didn't command the largest armies or win the most famous battles, but he preserved the legal and cultural framework that held the empire together. Without Chagatai, the Mongol Empire might have dissolved into warlordism even faster than it did. And yet, law alone doesn't conquer empires. For that, you need something more primal. Number 8. Jochi Khan, the disputed heir. At number 8, we've got Jochi Khan, Genghis Khan's eldest son, the conqueror of the western steppes, and the man whose bloodline would create the Golden Horde and rule Russia for centuries. Jochi was born under a shadow. His mother, Borta, had been kidnapped by the Merkits shortly after her marriage to Temujin. When she was rescued months later, she was pregnant. Was Jochi Temujin's son or the son of a Merkit captor? The question haunted him his entire life. Genghis Khan publicly claimed him as his own, but the whispers never stopped. His brothers, especially Chagatai, openly questioned his legitimacy. Despite this, Jochi became one of the empire's greatest commanders. He led the conquest of the northern steppes, subjugating the forest peoples of Siberia and the Kipchaks of the western steppe. These weren't easy campaigns. The forests were hostile, the tribes scattered and mobile, the terrain brutal. But Jochi adapted, using mobile warfare to hunt down nomadic enemies who thought their mobility would save them. If you are still watching, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. He was given the western domains as his ulus, his inheritance. This included everything from the Irtysh River to as far west as Mongol horses could reach. It was a mandate for infinite expansion. Jochi began planning the conquest of Ruses, of Eastern Europe, of the Muslim kingdoms in the Caucasus. But he died before he could fully execute his vision, in the early 13th century, possibly from illness, possibly from poison, possibly from a hunting accident. The timing was suspicious. He had quarreled with his father over strategy. Some sources suggest he was delaying his campaigns, possibly even preparing to rebel. Genghis Khan was furious. Then, Jochi died. Some historians believe Genghis had him killed. Others think it was natural. The truth died with them. But Jochi's legacy lived on through his sons. Batu Khan, his second son, would lead the Mongol invasion of Europe and found the Golden Horde. Through Jochi's bloodline, the Mongols would rule Russia for over 2 centuries, extracting tribute, installing princes, and fundamentally reshaping Eastern European politics. The Tatar yoke that crushed Russian independence, that was Jochi's legacy. He lands in Tier 3 because his personal achievements, while significant, were overshadowed by the question of his legitimacy and his premature death. But his bloodline's impact on history was enormous. The Golden Horde, the subjugation of Ruses, the Mongol invasions of Poland and Hungary, all of that traces back to Jochi. From disputed heir to dynasty founder, that's a legacy written in blood and iron. Number 7. Kublai Khan, the emperor who bridged worlds. At number 7, we have Kublai Khan, the grandson, who completed the conquest of China, founded the Yuan dynasty, and transformed the Mongol Empire from a horde into a civilization. Born in the early 13th century, Kublai was Tolui's son and grew up watching the empire expand in every direction. But unlike his grandfather, Kublai saw conquest as a means to an end, not the end itself. He was educated by Chinese scholars, learned Confucian philosophy, and understood that ruling an agrarian empire required different skills than conquering steppes. When he became Great Khan in the mid-13th century after a civil war with his brother, Kublai faced a choice: remain a nomadic Khan ruling from horseback or become an emperor ruling from a palace. He chose empire. He moved the capital from Karakoram to Khanbalik, modern-day Beijing, and declared himself Emperor of China, founding the Yuan dynasty. But don't mistake administrative skill for weakness. Kublai was still a conqueror. He completed the conquest of the Southern Song dynasty by 1279, a campaign that required integrating Chinese siegecraft, riverine warfare, and traditional Mongol cavalry tactics. The Song were rich, sophisticated, and defended by natural barriers like the Yangtze River. Kublai built a navy. He recruited Chinese generals. He systematically isolated Song cities, turned their own logistics against them, and ground them down over decades. When the last Song emperor drowned himself rather than surrender, Kublai became the first non-Han ruler of all China proper. It was a conquest over 7 centuries in the making, one that no previous nomadic power had achieved. The Xiongnu had failed. The Khitan had failed. The Jurchen had only conquered the north. Kublai succeeded where all had failed. But he didn't stop there. He launched invasions of Vietnam, Burma, and Java. He attempted to conquer Japan twice. Both invasions failed catastrophically when typhoons destroyed his fleets. The Japanese called them kamikaze divine winds. Kublai called them expensive disasters. But even in failure, he demonstrated something terrifying. The Mongols could adapt to naval warfare, could build fleets, could project power across oceans. His empire became the wealthiest in the world. He secured the entire Silk Road, created the Yam postal system that could move messages from Beijing to Persia in weeks, and presided over an era of cultural exchange unprecedented in history. Marco Polo served in his court. Persian astronomers built observatories in China. Chinese printing technology spread west. But here's the problem. Kublai's successors weren't Kublai. The Yuan dynasty would collapse within a century of his death, driven out by Chinese rebellions. His campaigns in Japan, Vietnam, and Southeast Asia mostly failed. He won China but couldn't hold the steppe. His cousins in the Western Khanates increasingly saw him as Chinese, not Mongol. He lands in Tier 2 because he achieved what his grandfather started, total conquest of China, and transformed the Mongol Empire into something that could last. But his legacy was divided. To the Chinese, he was a foreign conqueror. To the Mongols, he was a Khan who went soft. Yet none can deny, he built an empire that bridged east and west like never before. From horseback to throne, that was Kublai's journey. Number 6. Ögedei Khan, the builder of Karakoram. At number 6, we've got Ögedei Khan, Genghis Khan's third son, the first official Great Khan, and the man who transformed a horde into an empire with systems, cities, and infrastructure. Born in the late 12th century, Ögedei wasn't the eldest, wasn't the fiercest warrior, and wasn't the most brilliant tactician. But he had something his brothers lacked: administrative genius and an ability to build consensus. Genghis Khan recognized this. On his deathbed, he named Ögedei his successor, passing over his older brothers. When Ögedei became Great Khan in the late 1220s, the empire was still a mobile war machine. He made it permanent. He built Karakoram on the Orkhan River, the empire's first true capital city. Not a camp, not a seasonal gathering place, but a city with walls, palaces, temples, and marketplaces. Chinese artisans, Persian architects, and European craftsmen built a cosmopolitan capital in the heart of the steppe. But Ögedei was no mere builder. He was a conqueror. Under his rule, the Mongol Empire reached its greatest territorial expansion. He oversaw the final destruction of the Jin dynasty in northern China, completing his father's unfinished business. He launched the massive invasion of Kievan Rus that would subjugate Russia for centuries, and most terrifyingly, he ordered the invasion of Europe. In 1241, two massive Mongol armies invaded Poland and Hungary simultaneously. At Legnica, they destroyed a Polish-German army, including Teutonic Knights. 2 days later, at Mohi, they annihilated the main Hungarian royal army. All of Central Europe lay open. Vienna, Rome, Paris, all within reach of Mongol cavalry that had just proven European knights were obsolete. If you are still watching, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Then, Ögedei died. The news reached the armies in Europe, and Mongol law demanded all princes return for the election of the next Khan. The armies withdrew. Europe was saved not by military victory, but by one man's death thousands of miles away. Historians still debate, what if Ögedei had lived another 5 years? Would all Europe have fallen? But Ögedei's true genius was systemic. He expanded the YAM relay system, creating the world's first intercontinental postal network. Messages could travel from Hungary to Mongolia in weeks using thousands of relay stations. He standardized taxation, reformed currency, and created administrative structures that would outlast him. He also loved to drink heavily. His alcoholism worried his brothers and advisors. But even drunk, Ögedei made decisions that expanded the empire faster than any other Khan. When he died in his 50s, possibly from alcohol-related causes, the empire lost its unifying force. His death triggered succession crises, civil wars, and the eventual fragmentation of the empire. He lands in Tier 2 because he transformed the Mongol Empire from Genghis Khan's war machine into a functioning state. He built cities, systems, and infrastructure. He launched campaigns that terrified 3 continents. But his early death prevented him from completing his vision, and his alcoholism created instability. From Steppe Khan to imperial administrator Ögedei proved empires need builders as much as conquerors. Number 5. Hulagu Khan, the destroyer of the caliphate. At number 5, we have Hulagu Khan, the grandson who rode west with orders to conquer everything to the Mediterranean, and who ended the Islamic Golden Age with the sack of Baghdad. Hulagu was Tolui's son and Munka's brother, born in the early 13th century into a family that saw conquest as destiny. When Munka became Great Khan, he gave Hulagu a terrifying mandate: conquer the entire Middle East, destroy the assassins, topple the Abbasid Caliphate, subjugate Persia, secure Syria, keep going until you hit the Mediterranean. Hulagu rode west in the mid-1250s with an army that included siege engineers, Chinese catapult specialists, and contingents from across the empire. His first target was the assassins, the Nizari Ismailis, who had terrorized the region from their mountain fortress of Alamut for over a century. These were the fanatics who pioneered political assassination as statecraft. Hulagu didn't negotiate. He besieged Alamut and systematically destroyed every assassin fortress in Persia. The order that had seemed invincible crumbled before Mongol siegecraft. Then came Baghdad. In 1258, Hulagu's army surrounded the city. The Abbasid Caliph al-Mustasim thought his religious authority would protect him. He thought the Mongols wouldn't dare attack the spiritual center of Sunni Islam. He was catastrophically wrong. The siege lasted less than 2 weeks. Mongol siege engines pounded the walls. Sappers undermined defenses. On February 10, 1258, the walls fell. What followed was systematic annihilation. Hulagu's troops killed hundreds of thousands. Some historical sources claim over 1 million, though modern historians suggest the numbers were lower, but still staggering. The caliph was executed, reportedly rolled in a carpet and trampled by horses so his blood wouldn't touch the ground. The Tigris River allegedly ran black with ink from the thousands of books thrown into it from Baghdad's libraries, red with blood from the massacred population. The House of Wisdom, the intellectual center of the Islamic world for centuries, was destroyed. The Islamic Golden Age, which had given the world algebra, advanced astronomy, and preserved Greek philosophy, effectively ended in those horrific days. Hulagu established the Ilkhanate in Persia and Iraq, creating one of the 4 successor states of the Mongol Empire. He managed alliances with Christian kingdoms in the Caucasus, showing pragmatic diplomacy even amid brutality. His armies pushed into Syria, taking Aleppo and Damascus. But at Ain Jalut in 1260, the Mamluks of Egypt stopped him, handing the Mongols one of their first major defeats. The battle's timing was crucial. Munka had died the previous year, and Hulagu had withdrawn most of his forces back to Persia for the succession crisis. The remaining force was defeated. It was the high watermark of Mongol expansion in the Middle East. Hulagu lands in Tier 2 because he achieved his strategic objectives, destroying the assassins and the caliphate, establishing the Ilkhanate, but couldn't complete the conquest of the entire Middle East. His legacy is complex. To Muslims, He's the destroyer who ended centuries of cultural and scientific achievement. To historians, he's a commander who executed continental-scale strategy with brutal efficiency. He reshaped the Middle East political map and ended an era. That's power few can claim. Number 4. Batu Khan, the Golden Horde's founder. At number 4, we've got Batu Khan Jochi's second son, the supreme commander who led the Mongol invasion of Europe, founded the Golden Horde, and established Mongol rule over Russia for 2.5 centuries. Born in the early 13th century, Batu earned his legitimacy through conquest. When Ögedei Khan ordered the invasion of Rusas in Europe in the late 1230s, he gave supreme command to Batu with Subutai as chief strategist. The campaign began in winter, rivers froze into highways for cavalry. In 1237, Batu's armies crossed into Rus. Ryazan refused surrender. Batu destroyed it completely. The message was clear: resist and die. Vladimir, Suzdal, Kolomna, one after another, the principalities fell. The Mongols used frozen rivers as roads, moving with terrifying speed. If you are still watching, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. By 1240, Batu had taken Kiev, the spiritual heart of Rusas. With Kievan Rusas shattered, he turned west. At Legnica on April 9, 1241, his forces destroyed a Polish-German army using feigned retreats and smokescreens. 2 days later at Mohi, Subutai and Batu crushed the Hungarian royal army. They built pontoon bridges overnight, attacked at dawn, and left one escape route, a psychological trap that turned retreat into massacre. All of Central Europe lay open. Vienna, Rome, Paris, all within reach. Then Ögedei Khan died. Mongol law required all princes to return for the election. Batu withdrew. Europe survived not through military victory, but politics. Batu never returned. He established the Golden Horde at Sarai on the Volga. For over 2 centuries, Russian princes would pay tribute to Mongol overlords. The Tatar yoke fundamentally shaped Russian political development. Batu lands in Tier 2 because he conquered continental territory, established a lasting state, and came within reach of conquering Europe. But his European invasion remained incomplete. Number 3. Jebe Noyan, the arrow that never missed. At number 3, we have Jebe, the man who shot Genghis Khan's horse, confessed to it, and became one of the most audacious cavalry commanders in history. His birth name was Zurgadai. During a battle in the late 12th century, this enemy archer shot and killed Temujin's horse. After the battle, Temujin asked who had killed his horse. Zurgadai stepped forward and admitted it, expecting execution. Instead, Genghis Khan gave him a choice: die honorably or live and serve. Zurgadai chose loyalty. Temujin renamed him Jebe the Arrow, and he became one of the Khan's most trusted generals. Pure meritocracy, talent mattered more than past allegiances. Jebe's legendary status was cemented by the Great Raid. In 1220, after destroying the Khwarezmian Empire, Genghis Khan gave Jebe and Subutai an extraordinary order: pursue the Shah across Persia and gather intelligence on everything to the west. 20,000 horsemen rode around the Caspian Sea, covering over 4,000 miles in 3 years. They defeated Georgian armies twice. They smashed through the Kipchak Turks. They operated with complete independence, thousands of miles from support. In 1223, at the Kalka River, Jebe and Subutai faced a combined Rusas and Cuman army that outnumbered them 4-1. Jebe orchestrated one of history's most perfect feigned retreats. The Mongols appeared to flee in panic. For days, they fled, drawing the enemy into exhaustion. Then they turned, surrounded, and annihilated them. The captured Rusas princes were laid down, boards placed on their bodies, and the Mongols held a victory feast on top, crushing them to death. It was psychological warfare: resist and face not just death, but humiliation. Jebe died around 1224. In his final years, he had conquered China, destroyed Khwarezm, and scouted 3 continents. He lands in Tier 1 because his operational achievements, especially the Great Raid and Kalka River, demonstrated Mongol military capability at its peak. As a pure cavalry commander executing deep operations, Jebe has few equals in military history. Number 2. Subutai, the master of operational art. At number 2, we have Subutai, the blacksmith's son, who became the greatest strategist in Mongol history and possibly one of the greatest military commanders who ever lived. Born around 1175, Subutai rose through sheer genius. He would conduct over 20 major campaigns, command armies across 3 continents, and coordinate operations across distances that wouldn't be matched until the telegraph age. Subutai understood operational art, linking tactics and strategy, coordinating multiple armies towards single objectives, using time and space as weapons. While others fought battles, Subutai fought campaigns. If you are still watching, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. His partnership with Jebe on the Great Raid was his announcement to history. The Battle of Kalka River was his masterpiece of deception, but only the beginning. When Ogadei ordered the invasion of Europe in the late 1230s, Subutai was in his 60s. As chief strategist under Batu Khan, he planned breathtaking complexity, multiple armies invading simultaneously, using frozen rivers, moving in winter, culminating in the simultaneous destruction of Poland and Hungary in battles days apart and hundreds of miles distant. At Mohi, specifically, Subutai built pontoon bridges overnight, attacked at dawn through fog, surrounded the Hungarian camp, but left one escape route, a psychological trap. When Hungarians fled, Mongol cavalry turned it into a killing field. The Hungarian king barely escaped. His 60,000-man army was annihilated. Subutai's genius extended beyond tactics. He planned campaigns years ahead, positioned supplies, gathered intelligence, studied enemy psychology. He pioneered siege engines for nomadic cavalry, integrating Chinese and Persian engineers. He coordinated multiple columns across hundreds of miles, converging with precision timing impossible without modern communications. Subutai served 4 great khans, campaigned for 4 decades, conquered more territory than any general in history, over 7,000 miles from Korea to Poland. He fought in every climate and terrain, and he won. When he died around 1248 in his 70s, the empire lost its greatest military mind. Future campaigns would lack his operational genius. Subutai lands in Tier 1 because as a pure military commander executing operational warfare, he may be unmatched in history. Modern military academies still study his brilliance. From blacksmith's son to master strategist, Subutai exemplifies everything the Mongol meritocracy promised. Number -1, Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. At number 1, we have Genghis Khan born Temujin, the orphan who founded the largest contiguous land empire in human history. Born around 1162 near Lake Baikal, Temujin entered a world of violence and betrayal. His father was poisoned when Temujin was 9. His tribe abandoned his family to starve. His mother, Ho-Lun, kept them alive through gathering wild plants, while her children learned the world showed no mercy to the weak. Temujin was enslaved, escaped, betrayed by blood brothers, and nearly killed before adulthood. Most boys would have died. Temujin turned suffering into education and survival and power. He built alliances carefully, slowly gaining followers who valued his leadership. But the steppe tribes were fractured, constantly warring. Temujin saw what others didn't. The steppe could be unified through merit, loyalty, and law. His rise was methodical and ruthless. When tribes opposed him, he integrated survivors, promoting talented warriors regardless of origin. By 1206, he had unified the Mongol tribes and was proclaimed Genghis Khan universal ruler. He instituted the Yasa, a legal code transforming warriors into a disciplined machine. He created the decimal military system, units of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, commanded by merit-promoted officers. He broke tribal bonds, creating loyalty to empire. He established the Yam relay system. He demanded religious tolerance. He promoted based on ability, not birth. If you are still watching, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Then conquest began. First came China. The Jin dynasty thought walls would protect them. Genghis adapted, recruiting siege engineers, building catapults. The Jin capital fell in 1215. Then came the Khwarezmian Empire. When the Shah's governor massacred a Mongol caravan and killed envoys, Genghis took it personally. Envoys were sacred. The message had to be absolute. What followed was systematic annihilation. Genghis divided his army into columns commanded by sons and generals. They converged on cities from multiple directions. Bukhara fell. Samarkand fell. The Shah fled, pursued until he died broken and alone. Cities that resisted were destroyed completely. Merv was exterminated. Nishapur was annihilated, plowed under. The message, resist and face erasure from existence. But Genghis offered choices. Surrender early and be integrated, taxed but protected, artisans valued, merchants trading, religions tolerated. Resist and become an example. This wasn't just cruelty, it was strategic terror. After a few examples, regions surrendered without fighting. His final campaign was against the Western Xia, who had failed to provide military support. Genghis felt betrayed. In 1227, despite being in his 60s and failing health, he led armies into Xia territory. He died during the campaign in August 1227. Even on his deathbed, his orders were ruthless. Complete the destruction. Leave nothing standing. The Xia were erased from history. Genghis's legacy is staggering. He created an empire covering 9.15 million square miles, roughly the size of Africa. His armies killed an estimated 40 million people, roughly 11% of the global population, though historians debate figures. Some regions took centuries to recover. But he also created the Pax Mongolica, unprecedented trade, cultural exchange, communication across Eurasia. The Silk Road became safer than ever. Technologies flowed from China to Europe. Gunpowder, printing, paper money, all spread faster through Mongol unification. His meritocracy was revolutionary. He promoted blacksmith's sons to general. He recruited enemy warriors who showed talent. He valued loyalty and ability over bloodline. His empire included Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, shamanists, and tolerated all. His descendants ruled the largest empire in history. Kublai conquered all China. Hulagu destroyed the caliphate. Batu subjugated Russia. All traced back to Genghis. Modern genetics suggest roughly 16 million men carry markers tracing to Genghis Khan's lineage, 0.5% of global males. His biological legacy matches his military one. Genghis Khan lands in Tier 1, not just at the top, but in his own category. He didn't just conquer empires, he created the system that would conquer empires for a century after his death. He transformed tribal warriors into a military machine that terrified 3 continents. He built an empire that lasted longer than Alexander's, covered more territory than Rome's, and fundamentally reshaped Eurasian history. From orphan to universal ruler, from hunted child to creator of history's largest land empire, from Temujin to Genghis Khan, that's not just conquest, that's transformation on a scale few humans ever achieve.